Hi, welcome to my Stamp with Jodi YouTube channel. I'm Jodi Reinert, and you may notice something a little different this week. I am wearing a crown and a boa because I finally won another episode of the Great American Stampin' Show. Our last episode featured designer series paper, and this is the card that I created that won that episode. So if you haven't watched this video, be sure to go back. I've got all of them here in a playlist. So if you go to my Great American Stampin' Show playlist, you'll see all of them we've done this season as well as season 1 from last year. So this time we are on episode 5 and we are featuring embossing folders. So I've got my fun boa all over. Okay, so embossing folders. You might think that you know how to use embossing folders. You stick the paper in, you crank it through, you get texture. And yes, that's definitely one way to use an embossing folder, but there are many other things you can do with them as well. So I'm going to show you a few on my card today, and I'm sure that my competitors, Julie, Shannon, and Brandy, will have some other things for you as well. So if you're not familiar, the way this works is that you watch my video and then go to the links that are in the description below, click through to watch all 4 videos, and then you vote on the one that you like the best. And you do that by giving a thumbs up. So that is what we've got for you today. But before we start, I want to tell you about one other thing. We are planning something new for you, and we're so excited about it. It's called a Stamp-Along. And we don't have every detail figured out yet. We'll be sure to fill you in as soon as we can. But basically what it is that you will get a kit. You can purchase a kit that will be shipped in the mail to you, and then you will be able to actually stamp along with us during a Great American Stampin' Show episode. So we are going to plan projects, send you a kit, and you can watch the videos and just do the projects right along with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, as soon as we have more details, we will definitely share those with you. So for now, Episode 5, Embossing Folders. Enjoy all 4 videos. I'm really excited about my card, and I hope that you love it as much as I do, and that I earn your thumbs up. All right, so we're all about embossing folders for this episode, and the folder that I'm using is part of the Basics embossing folder set. So it's kind of interesting that it just has such a basic name, but literally 3D Basics embossing folders consists of these 3 different patterns. They come together in one package. So I'm using this pattern here on the card that I'm going to show you today. So we are actually going to do 3 different techniques with this one embossing folder. There are just a couple of things that I did in advance just because what I do want to show you might take a little bit longer. So this is a piece of smoky slate. I've already stamped with Memento black ink, the greeting, and I'm going to do the most basic embossing technique by setting this in the embossing folder and running it through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. However, instead of just setting it in like this and running it through, what I'm gonna do is leave that happy birthday peeking out the bottom just a little bit, kind of make sure it's straight. And then I'm going to make my sandwich where I use my platform, set the cardstock in the embossing folder, and then the number 4 cutting plate. So I'll run this through my machine. And like I said, what we have is just the most basic technique where it's embossed. Now I left that so that that cardstock would stay flat, but the rest of the piece is embossed with that texture. Super basic embossing technique. So I'll go ahead and put my adhesive on the back here. When it is an embossed layer, I tend to use a little more adhesive than normal. I go all the way around the perimeter just to make sure that it sticks well, because some of that surface of the cardstock is raised up with the embossing. So this is layered on my thick basic white cardstock. I always use thick for card bases just to give it a little bit of a stronger card base than our regular basic white. So that's our first step. Now let's do our second step. This simply is a piece. You can notice this. I die cut with this die from Everyday Details Dies. So I've got this showing here, but don't let that fool you. There is more to this package. There is a whole nother sheet. These are great dies that I've been using a ton. So I went ahead and die cut this shape from both Coastal Cabana and Berry Burst. So my Coastal Cabana piece for this particular card is just going to stay flat. I'm not going to do anything in particular to this layer, and I'll just attach it on the card right about there. Now, before I attach this piece, I'm going to show you embossing folder technique number 2. So with this, I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. I'm going to pull in my Berry Burst ink pad. And you know what? I don't think I showed you the stamps that we're using. This is Carnival Treats. This is what's called a host set. It's in the current mini catalog. Don't let that confuse you. As long as you have a $150 order, you can use your Stampin' Rewards to purchase this host exclusive stamp set. So this one is called Carnival Treats. The techniques that I'm showing you, you can use with any stamp set that you might already have at home. Okay, so I'm going to take my Berry Burst ink pad and I'm going to apply ink on the inside of the folder, and I'm going to do it on the side that has the Stampin' Up! Logo. So I'm just going to open it up and kind of twist and turn a little bit. Get it pretty evenly inked. I think that's good. All I need to do is make sure that the area that's inked is as big as this layer. So I'm going to set it face down on that ink. Carefully close my embossing folder and make that same sandwich, platform, embossing folder, and number 4 cutting pad, and I'll run that through. Okay, so now we'll open this and you can see that not only is this piece embossed, it's also got ink on there. So it's just tone on tone, Berry Burst ink on the Berry Burst cardstock, but doesn't that look cool with the embossing? You could, if you wanted to, instead of applying it on this side, apply it here, and then the inked parts would be what you see as uninked here. So you could do the opposite. You could do it 2 different ways with every embossing folder. Hopefully that made sense. When it's embossed, it pushes the cardstock up, so you can either put ink on the side that will add color to what's pushed up, or you can add it to the other side and the color would be on what's left behind. The more I talk, the more confusing that sounds. It's really not, I promise. The lesson here is just try it different ways. Put ink on both sides. See which one you like best. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead. I put my adhesive on this and we will layer this right here. Because it might be a little bit inky, it shouldn't be wet, but I'm just going to go like that to make sure it's on there really well. Okay, now you may have noticed I stamped the donut from the Carnival Treats in advance, again, just because there's so much I want to show you and I don't want to run out of time. So on this other piece of basic white, I'm using my Berry Burst ink again. This time I have this fun stamp. This reminds me of a 7-Eleven Slurpee. Not sure if you have a 7-Eleven convenience store where you are, but in high school, I got Slurpees all the time. Half cherry, half Coke. That was my go-to. Oh my goodness. And I totally just... Okay, this is what it looks like when you just stamp it. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's try that again so that I can show you technique number 3 with the embossing folder. So I will ink it up on the Berry Burst, so that's solid there. I'm just going to press it down onto the embossing folder. You can see there's a little bit of a pattern. Some of that ink stayed on the folder. So now when I stamp on the basic white, we get this really cool pattern. All right, so this can get set aside. You might be thinking, oh my goodness, this is cool, but that's kind of a mess. Literally, just run it under the faucet. The ink will run right off. Pat it dry with a paper towel, and you are good to go. Okay, so again, if you just stamped and forgot, like I did, to touch it to the embossing folder, you get a more solid image like this. But once you do touch it, it gives you the pattern like this one. Okay, so just a couple of things before I add these pieces to the card. I want to pull in a couple of our Stampin' blends. So I'm going to use our light berry burst, and I'm going to color over what I would call the actual Slurpee part of this image. And I'm just going to make that appear more solid so that you don't see that pattern as much. Turn it just a little bit, and there. Then I'm going to take my dark pecan pie, and with this donut, what I want to do is kind of differentiate between like the cake part of the donut and the frosting. So I'm just going to add this pecan pie right on top of that Calypso Coral ink. And it's crazy how much it just kind of covers that ink and is a totally different color here without having to stamp with two different colors. Sorry, apparently I can't speak fluently and color small spaces at the same time. Don't forget this little part of the donut too, that cake that shows through there. And then I'm going to leave the frosting part, the Calypso Coral color. Okay, I think that's good. And then I just need to cut out these images, and it's pretty easy. There aren't coordinating dies, but they're pretty easy cuts to use paper snips and just cut them out. Okay, now I've got my two pieces cut out. I am going to attach them to my card using Stampin' Dimensionals. So I'll put a few on the donut and attach that to the Berry Burst inked embossed side. So I'll just kind of set it down here a little bit, have it go off the edge there. And then my Slurpee will go on the Coastal Cabana piece. And I'm going to have that go up just a little bit so the straw is off the top. So we've got straight regular embossing, technique number 1. Technique number 2 is where we applied ink to the folder and then ran that piece through. Technique number 3 is where we inked up the image, pressed it down onto the folder to create a pattern on our stamped image. So those are 3 different techniques with that one embossing folder. My last little thing to do on this card is fine tip glue. So I should do this on scrap paper before I start, just to make sure I've got the feel of it. I am going to put just a little bit of this fine tip glue on each of the sprinkles on the donut. It just adds a little bit of a raised glossy surface, and it's just something fun to do with these sprinkles. And then the best part is I'm going to do it over the top of this Slurpee cup. So I'm just going to add it, just, like where that clear plastic top is. It's just so fun to add just this little bit of fine tip glue. Now with fine tip glue, if you're not familiar with it, you will need to let it just sit flat and dry a little bit. Resist the urge to stick your finger in it to see if it's dry. Just leave it alone, let it dry, and you'll have that really great glossy raised surface. Now I want to pull in, let me set that aside. I want to pull in a card that I did earlier without the embossing, just as a point of reference. So the background is not embossed, the Berry Burst layer is not embossed, and the Slurpee cup is not embossed. So there's zero embossing on this one, but look at the detail and how fun that is to add those 3 different embossing techniques on the card on the left. I hope you've learned a little bit. You can use 1, 2, or all 3 of these techniques on your next creative project. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to watch Brandy, Shannon, and Julie's videos and vote for your favorite by giving one of us a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.